But someone else does my taxes. I just refuse. Well, you know, I know it's easier than it used to be. It is with
So if all of you folks in Zoom land can mute until it's time to speak, that would be great, just because we just got a little interference at this end. And we're, Chairman Colburn's just about to get started here in a second. These meetings are being recorded, so you've heard that. And, we're, Dick, whenever you're ready.
Yep, why don't we get started? We do the minutes first, so we get them done. Otherwise, the language. Do we have any comments on these?
These are March 9th.
It's not really, it's just a comment. On line 45. You say, required notices have been sent and the hearing properly reconvene. I mean, properly kind of suggests that sometimes we do it without a properly.
I can get rid of properly.
What do you, I mean, it's nice to have it there.
Yeah, reconvene.
Okay.
Okay. Got that? That's not bad.
So this is an AI thing?
It's
Or did-
been run through ChatGPT. And, yes,
There's fewer grammatical things.
well, that's, you know, I know it'll tear you up, Peter, but it's, might save us a few minutes.
I don't see any edits.
Jeannie Wood report, I think has a question.
The board to introduce themselves, we have a large group of people here, I don't know that everybody knows who everybody is on the board, I don't expect us.
I think they're just trying to get their minutes done, and then I think Dick has a whole process that he'll go through.
I move we accept the minutes as edited.
A second.
All those in favor? Okay. So you didn't read the town report?
Jesus, that's right. It's kind of quickly done.
Yeah, I know who you all are, but there are other people in one of the.
I know.
I
Yeah.
know.
We can introduce ourselves if we want to. Sure. I'm Dick Colburn, I'm the chair.
I'm Brad Atwater, board member.
Peter Martin, board member.
Steve Halloran, town administrator, recording secretary.
I'm Matt Decker, and here in the empty chair is Mike Button. Lives up on Baines Road.
Okay. Now we already read the notice. Should I read it again? We've never had the regional impact. Second.
I don't think it can hurt.
Go ahead, sure.
Okay, 2601 Atlantic Tower for property at Phil Green, located off of Old Stagecoach Road, tax map 2008, 208, lot 5. The project involves a special exception, request along with other sections of the Plainfield zoning ordinance to construct a 130-foot monopole tower designed to hold up 4 different carriers. The property is zoned rural conservation 2. Okay, the way we normally run cases is that after we've opened it, we have the applicant present it to the board. The board asks questions to clarify any details of the case. And then we talk among ourselves about whether or not we feel we have a sufficiently complete application to move forward. And then if we do, then we open the public hearing. We hear from abutters first, and then other residents of town get to say their piece. And then we'll close the public hearing, we'll deliberate, and hopefully reach a decision. There are lots of times when we have to ask for more information from an applicant that'll send us into, continuing the meeting to the case to another meeting, the next month, things like that. So, there's a lot of, this one, there's a lot of information and it's gonna take a fair bit to go through it all, so. Now, anything else now? That's unusual to this one? No, I'm not thinking of anything. I think we're good right now, so we'd like to hear from you.
Okay.
And we already know a fair bit of it, but we really want you to start from scratch.
Okay, first of all, is it okay if I stand here, or-
That's fine, I know you lost your seat.
It's all right, I think I can manage standing up, we'll see though, if I collapse, then I'll help you.
We'll find a chair.
Figure it out. My name is Chris Swiniarski, I'm an attorney with Divine Millimet, and I'm representing Atlantic Tower, who is the tower developer. As you stated, this is an application for a 130-foot monopole at the property off of Old Stagecoach Road. For those not familiar with a monopole, what that is essentially a single pole with antenna arrays up top, which is different from what in the industry is called a lattice tower or a self-supporting tower, which are the ones you see with sort of grid work holding it up. Older radio antennas were like that. Just with all of these tower applications is that we identify a need for the various service providers where there's basically a need for better coverage. And that identification process isn't necessarily based on whether or not any one person has 5 bars on their phone in a given area or anything like that. There's a signal strength that carriers want to achieve, and that's so that all of the users in the area can have optimal service. And in the packet that I provided, there's some graphic representations as to where the gap has been identified. And I don't know, but I would think most people in town would sort of recognize where those areas are. The service in this area, of town is not great by any means. So with that, we go looking for viable locations where we could actually put a facility. The factors are as you would imagine. Of course, the preferred would be an existing tower for sure. But we wouldn't be here if there was an existing tower that works. We did give you a map showing all the existing towers within 2 miles of this, which is not to say that the tower necessarily reaches 2 miles. There's really no set sort of radius a tower can reach because it's influenced by the main tree cover, things like that, but that's sort of an approximation. I think more importantly, it's sort of a common sense thing. No one's looking to build a tower if it's not needed because it costs money to build a tower. These things don't, there's no reason to build it if you don't need it. And so with that, Brendan Gill, who's the site acquisition consultant, and he included an affidavit in those materials, identified several properties that could be viable at first glance. Approached some of the property owners who either weren't interested or did some further research on the properties and found that there were access issues, and settled on this one as the most viable alternative to do it, the one that works best. With this application, it is a pretty cookie cutter sort of standard facility. 130 feet, it has a fenced compound that is 75 by 75 feet, where there will be inside that fenced compound, equipment cabinets for the various carriers. There's about 4 carriers right now that predominate the market. Those cabinets are small, not visible off the property. They're maybe, chest height or so, similar to other utility cabinets that you see around town. Access is provided from an existing there's been an issue raised, I guess, by one of the abutters as to whether or not that's a public road, private road. And there's a couple ways to address that. Namely, if it is in fact private, then Mr. Green owns half of it. At which case we can certainly access it only on Mr. Green's property. But the more likely situation is that it is in fact a public road. And I haven't done any research into this, but from what I understand, this road was purportedly abandoned a long time ago, maybe around 1900. But it's still being used to this day. And the law in New Hampshire is that if a road was used by the public for 20 years prior to 1968, it's a public road by prescription. So, you know, my thought is that that road is public, but I don't think that road itself is a dispositive factor in this case. Because if for some reason there's an objection to using that road, we don't have to use it. We can simply stay on Mr. Green's property. Those are the basics of the application. It is pretty straightforward. I know there was some discussion, and we should probably address now, what relief is really necessary here. Because as you probably know, in your ordinance, telecommunications facilities are allowed in certain areas by special exception. This is not one of them. So they can be allowed by variance, in which case, if it's a use variance, I would think the special exception criteria no longer applies. You know, in talking with Mr. Halloran, we weren't really sure, to be honest, so I wanted to put that to the board and sort of to make the determination as to what criteria we would go under. The overarching thing with that criteria, however, is that federal law does preempt it in the end, such that, so if we apply under the state law variance criteria, and we are denied because we don't meet one of those criteria, federal law then kicks in and preempts such that you cannot deny it if it would amount in what's called an effective prohibition of wireless service. And what that basically means is that if there's no better place to do it, then this is the place that has to be allowed. And that's what our process focuses around, because you know, we do this for a living. We've been doing it for 20 years as this law has evolved. So we do our search procedure in a way that federal law dictates the towers be allowed. And we do that in order to be successful. So, you know, while I think for administrative purposes, it makes sense to identify which criteria we're going to consider this under, in the end, we're probably going to be considering it under the federal law criteria anyway. And the other point that was referenced is that your special exception criteria that's applicable requires a balloon test. And we asked for a waiver in the application. We can do a balloon test, but my experience is that they aren't that valuable because of wind. We float these balloons and the wind blows it around, and it's hard to really get an idea over a long period of time. You know, so usually when I've done balloon tests in other towns, they say they want it up for, you know, a day or 2 days. It's almost impossible to keep a balloon floating at 130 feet for 2 days. The wind blows it around and it's not going to be in the spot where the tower is going to be, and that's the whole purpose of doing it. So what we usually do instead, and which we find much more accurate, is we'll still fly a balloon, and we have people that can produce photo simulations. So basically what they do is when that balloon is flying and there's a person at that site confirming, yes, it's vertical or relatively vertical, there's another team of people driving the public roads, photographing the balloon, showing where they can see it. From that photograph, they will essentially superimpose the tower into it to give a pretty realistic impression of what this tower will look like from any given public vantage point. We can't do that on private property. You know, we can't go into someone's second story bedroom and things like that. But it gives us a pretty good idea of what it's going to look like to the community. And, you know, in my experience, again, doing this for many years, I would never tell you tower is going to be invisible. It's not. The question is, you know, is it tolerable to provide the service that that the American consumer demands, really? And I know there's some people that don't like it. Don't say they don't need a mobile device that has fast internet service. I get it, but In today's day and age, that contingent of people, I think, is the minority. The vast majority of people use mobile devices all day, every day. From the federal government's perspective, the idea in preempting local laws and supporting the deployment of wireless communications is simply a matter of competition. Not so long ago, people thought, cell phones will never replace landlines. Well, they have. And I don't know if that's true here in Plainfield. I don't know, but in large part of America, it's true. I haven't had a landline for more than 20 years. And we're seeing that now with wireless as well. Right now, T-Mobile is making a big push. You may have seen commercials to replace your internet service with a wireless service. That's the ultimate goal here, is for that to be competition for the American consumer to be able to say, hey, maybe I don't need to pay, you guys have Comcast or Xfinity, something like that. But they no longer get the monopoly. Now, instead, you do have a choice and an alternative. You can shop and perhaps get a better price or better service. So that's really the driving impetus behind the federal law that's involved here. So with that, I mean, those are really the basics of this application. I know there's probably a lot of questions, so I can start fielding those and we can have a discussion and see where we end up. I don't expect, anything to necessarily happen tonight. Like, I think the visual analysis, whether it's by balloon test or us creating those, is important for this board and the community. And obviously, I can't do that tonight. But I wanted to settle on that so we can go back and do our homework and get it done so that people can see it. So, I'd like to answer as many questions as possible tonight, but understanding that, we will have to do that simulation in the future, however the board thinks it should be done.
Okay. Do you have any specific questions?
I guess I have a couple questions. One, I guess I'm a little upset or just disappointed, is a better word, that when we talked about the balloon test a month ago, that you hadn't made some provision for having done that before this meeting. Most of these people here are concerned about the visual aspects of what the tower is going to do. So that's my comment.
Well, they
The
can
question-
answer that. If you
Pardon?
don't mind. I can answer that. if
Okay,
you don't
go right
mind,
ahead.
Before we lose track of it. So when we usually do the balloon test, we set a time that everyone knows about so they can go look at it and see how it impacts them. So we didn't do that at the last meeting. So if that was the expectation, I'm sorry, that's not what I thought was the expectation. Because again, we would normally say, okay, we're doing a balloon test on Friday, it's gonna be floating from.
Well, it's difficult for us to make a decision. We haven't got all the information, and that's one of the pieces of information that we care about, the public certainly cares about. And
Absolutely.
so there was no way for us to make a decision tonight without that information.
Understood.
The second question I have is, the alternative site analysis. For a number of these, you say landowner was unresponsive. Unresponsive to me means something different than probably what it means to you. What does unresponsive mean?
Phone calls and registered letters went unanswered.
Okay, my understanding is that some of these people weren't contacted.
Okay, well, I didn't do it, so I don't know that, but I can look into that. Are there specific people who?
I think that probably some of the people who are here would say that.
Okay,
No.
well, if, I guess then at the public comment period, if they wanted to say that, I can take down the names and
Yeah, I
find
mean,
more
you know,
information. for
it's
the next meeting.
just, again, that's disturbing or disappointing that the information which you provided us may not be quite what is represented.
That's possible, although, like I said, I'd have to look into it and gather the actual facts.
Okay,
Were they actually asked at the last meeting to, because we had a bit of the conversation about balloon tests. I was under the impression they were asked specifically for visual representations.
It was a follow-up letter that I sent out that asked for 3 things, of which we only got 1.
Mhm.
You didn't provide the other 2 things.
Right, as I said, the second thing was determining what criteria considering this application under, And
Right,
that's-
but we told you to apply as a variance. We gave you that information and we said, provide a visual and analysis
So
of the tower.
The board didn't say that.
Okay, well, you chose not to respond. You responded only to the study, which we're now hearing some of the landowners never got contacted. That's the only thing he gave us since the
Right.
last meeting was the other alternative sites.
Mhm.
And since you provided it, landowners have come forward and said, we were never even contacted.
Okay, well, I will have to check with.
So we don't have a lot of new information. You chose not to provide it on the letter the town gave you.
The letter that you gave me said that it was your opinion that a variance criteria should be provided. However, the board decides it, and the board didn't make that decision.
But you agree you didn't address it. You didn't send us a letter that said, we're not gonna decide that now, we'll decide it later. Right, I mean,
I didn't send that letter.
right, you did not. That's what I'm saying. You only addressed one of the three criteria that we asked you to for tonight's meeting.
So again, with the balloon test,
And I'm done. I'm done.
okay, the things you asked me for were not things that can be done in a week.
I think it was 3 weeks ago. I'm not sure. I mean, Dick's got the letter in the file, but it wasn't.
I think you asked for it was in a week, maybe 3. The bottom line is, so there's a misunderstanding because I was under the impression we are here tonight to discuss it. And I'm trying to be equitable about it. Like if I just do a balloon test. Your letter says I asked for a waiver to do a visual test in lieu of a balloon test. The board has not acted on that waiver. So how, you were expecting me to produce something when the board hasn't given me that instruction yet? That's for the two that I didn't answer. I'm here asking for the board's instruction.
Okay, we don't need to, deal it on that level. That is information that we need and we won't be able to act on the application fully until we have, it. That's all that.
As I
all it
said at the
comes down
beginning,
to.
I don't expect that. But I do think we need to decide, and the board has to decide, the board has the authority to decide. How are we taking this application? Is it special exception criteria or variance criteria? That's number one. And are we doing a balloon test or the visual analysis that I just described?
Well, it can't be a special exception.
So we're doing variance
So it
criteria.
has to be, there has to be a variance involved at the very least.
Okay,
The criteria you're referencing as special exception criteria is not the general criteria, but rather the wireless communication facilities. And the ordinance does reference that as requiring a special exception in order to get a building permit for it, but I suspect they never imagined that anyone would be building one of these in RC2.
It's
But,
prohibited in RC2.
Right.
That's why.
so it has to be a variance, there's just, I don't think there's any debate there. And there is variance criteria in the ordinance.
oh, absolutely, I'm familiar with it, I just, again, there was an ambiguity that I had tried to resolve. At the staff level, we didn't come to a resolution, so I was hoping the board would tell us which one. It considers the appropriate criteria to evaluate, you've told me now, I will submit that.
Okay, so.
This is usually the point where we discuss whether we think we have an application.
Well, I have one more question.
Okay.
You've talked about 4 tenants on the tower. And how did you pick the number 4?
Because there's generally 4 carriers in this area. There's Verizon, AT&T / Singular, T-Mobile, and then usually US Cellular.
Have you done lots of other towers in the area? Are you familiar with
In
this
this,
territory?
New England,
New
yes.
Englandish, yeah.
Yeah, hundreds.
In this
Okay.
town.
In
they've
this
done at least
town?
one.
Never go to this town.
There's an, you haven't maybe, but your company has, the company has, so,
Very likely, yeah.
yes, I think 2 out of the 3,
I'm wondering how many tenants they have on those towers.
yeah.
I can find out. I don't know off the top of my head, so.
I question whether or not 4 is the right number. And
Okay.
whether it could be three, for instance, and that would shorten the tower down and it would affect the view issues.
Yeah, so that is always a possibility and sometimes we get there as a result of the ZBA process. We do go with a shorter tower. So there's sort of competing interests there because on the one hand, the idea is to co-locate, you know, have as few towers as possible,
Mhm.
have as many tenants on a tower as possible. However, if there really is only a need for three, yeah, we frequently can shorten it. It's usually about 10 feet
Right.
per carrier. We call it a RAD center. And yeah, that's typically not a problem if that's the case. I can find out for you.
That's why it'd be very interested to know the ones that have been around for a while. Do you,
Well,
They maxed out?
not only that, but what the reaction would be to reducing the height of the tower.
Okay, well, let me find out.
So that would be these, the maps we have of the, I just had them out here a moment ago, but
It's tab 8, I think, okay.
yeah, I could look at it that way too.
130-foot height assumes 4 tenants with sufficient room above the tree line.
Right, so this analysis is done at 126 feet, so we'd be talking about 116 feet for the analysis, right?
Those are center lines. In this business, they go by center line, so like of the antenna, so. You know, that's the middle of the antenna, but the total.
Right, the height, it would be another 4 feet above that, but I was just looking at truly where it would be. So, well, anyway, we'd be talking about 116 feet for the analysis.
Yeah, the analysis would be an antenna at a center line height of 116 feet. The reality is the top of that antenna will be about 120 feet.
Yeah.
Before we leave the balloon test issue, have we made it clear to him that,
Well, have we accepted the application?
fair enough?
I think it's more or less a formality, because obviously we've taken possession of it in most ways, and certainly we have a lot of people that are vested in it. So I think we're on our way to having enough information.
Enough so that we can start.
I think we have all.
Yeah, the only thing I would ask is that I assume that some of the people here are on this list that you've listed as unresponsive. Maybe at the end of the meeting, you could
Well, we talked about it during. the public
identify
hearing.
themselves. Okay,
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can get
to him.
those.
Yes. Okay, so we're gonna continue with this case. I think we need a visual evaluation. Do we need a vote for that?
Well, and which do you want? A traditional balloon test or a,
In this day and age,
Um,
we should be able to look at,
well, you said the process is to fly a balloon for a short period of time and then so that it would be both. And as long as we knew when the balloon was, we could tell everybody when the balloon's gonna be there and then we get the visual representation. So it could be, it's both of them.
Yeah.
You can, the only issue with that is I don't know it tonight to tell everybody, but I can certainly communicate that. And if there's a way to circulate that information.
Through the town office.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's,
On the website.
Yeah, and they have
Website,
Facebook
yeah.
and they have the shooting match, I guess, right?
that's fine. I can, that's easy enough.
You said you have people driving around on the public roads.
Yep.
If folks are curious about the view from their house and want to invite your people to come take pictures from their hilltop houses, is that a possibility?
It's a possibility, they're not gonna go inside anyone's house.
Right.
But if someone wanted to invite them onto the land, it would be, their discretion. If for some reason something is on that land that makes them uncomfortable, I'm not gonna compel them to, I don't know, 5 pit bulls hanging from a chain or something, but yeah, if it's just drive up and take a picture from my driveway, sure. Yeah.
Okay. And we're also looking at elaboration of the alternative site analysis in terms of contact with some of the landowners and how that was attempted and what responses were given and were there were other comments on this too, like line H talks about, on Methodist Hill Road, higher terrain blocks coverage to the south, right? And we were kind of trying to understand why coverage to the south from Methodist Hill Road would be important when the coverage gap is mostly to the north.
Well, let me take a look.
So this gets into kind of one of the big questions that I had, addressing the issue of whether the hole has to be allowed on this particular site where it requires a variance versus other sites in town in the area where it could be by special exception. And I think the alternative sites that you identified were mainly by special exception, rather than being in the RC2 where it's a variance that's required. So I think we as a board need to do a fair bit of legwork in understanding why each of these alternative properties, I mean, some of them are pretty self-evident that the sites match up with people's homes where they presumably don't want a cell tower right next to their home. But like Dick mentioned specifically, item H, that looked like one where maybe there's discussion in the case law about trade-offs where, right, less ideal sites. But there's a trade-off that you get some of the coverage and perhaps that requires a different tower height or a supplemental tower somewhere else, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, and you're definitely right on point about the trade-offs, and that's where I would go with that analysis as well. It becomes a point of, okay, so, and I would never tell you this is the only place that we can achieve this. The question becomes, is there something that's better? And the question becomes, is that site better to the extent that it's worth losing that additional coverage, you know, better from the board's perspective? I don't know that, you know, that's for the board to tell us. So H is, I'm sorry, my reading glasses, but
Methodist Hill Road.
bottom one. Yeah. The owner of that property here? Anyone know?
Huckins? Nathan and Bernie Huckins?
I don't think
We're
they're
on
here.
Methodist Hill.
Hmm?
We're on Methodist Hill, yes.
They own where those, it's midway up the hill on the right, coming from 120. There's a forest land, I think they bought from Razzle.
Right.
That's the property.
Oh.
About 40 acres.
Yes, I think that's
Isn't
right.
that what the patch family owns?
No, other side of the road.
Other side of the
Other
road.
South side of the road.
All right, well, let me find that information as well and submit it. I don't know that answer off the top of my head.
And even though you say it's not dispositive, it might be a good idea to find out whether that is a class 6 road or it's been thrown up.
Right, our town records indicate it's been discontinued in the 1929 or some record, you know, we'd have to pull out the town meeting records and they'll be difficult. They'll say, you know, from Peter Martin's house over to Steve's house, but Howard's, our former town clerk's interpretation of the map that we use in our office suggests there was an action at a town meeting in the early 1900s to completely discontinue the road, not subject to gates and bars.
Okay, so it's thrown up essentially,
So
that
reverts to the public property.
Yes, there's a bunch of arguments about whether land that needs it for access gets to continue to use it and to what extent. I mean, certainly we have other discontinued roads in town where somebody owns a piece of property up it.
Right.
And if they wanna sugar their land or or go cut some firewood, the only way they can use it is the old road that goes over others.
They have a right
They,
to that.
they continue to have that right, but as we all know who dabbled in this, New Hampshire law about old roads is, but I think our records are clear that it's discontinued. Not subject to gates and, so it's not class X.
Right, but what happens, as I was explaining, is it becomes a public right of way again. If the public keeps moving after the discontinuance, the town doesn't have an obligation to maintain it. However, it becomes public right of way if the public uses it for 20 years, prior to 1968.
But which public is using it?
Well, from what I'm told, lots of people still use that road today.
For what purpose? I mean, if they
Uh,
walk on it, is that sufficient? To keep.
Well, it's pre-1968. You may have a bit of an uphill battle, 20 years continuous use prior to 1968, but I think you.
Well, it's
addressed
still
it.
used today. I mean, the logical conclusion is that it's not like the public stopped using it for a certain time and then started again. That's a little odd.
I think for whatever reason, the town considers it discontinued. We don't believe there's a public right there to use that.
And it
Beyond-
is. It's not, it wouldn't be categorized as class 6 necessarily. It would be a public right of way if, again, the public has been using it for 20 years prior to 1968. What that means is that the public has a right to use it. That's all. But again,
Argue that.
that one,
Who has the burden of proof?
What? It matters to the landowner who lives there, but you say you would work with or around him.
yeah, we can shift our access over. I think when I saw it, it was nighttime, but it's only about 20 feet wide, maybe 25, and if we're assuming that it's discontinued and no longer public, then each landowner on the side of it owns the center line, and we can shift over so that we are not crossing the center line of it. So that's what I'm saying. It's really not that big of an issue.
You should visit it during the day.
Okay. Well, what would I see?
I'm saying it's worthwhile to go visit your site during the day. That could be like a good idea.
Okay, yeah. We're gonna save your comments for the public hearing, if you don't mind. Okay, do we have enough now? So we should move on to public hearing?
I feel we have enough to get started. We obviously
Okay.
not gonna finish tonight, but.
But before we finish, before we complete the evening, we should give him his assignment on visual analysis.
Yeah, I was,
We already.
Or have we done that? In your opinion?
We've done that. I mean, there's gonna be.
Do you think we did it?
I do. So,
He's gonna
So what are you
fly
gonna bring
balloon
next
for a
time?
short time, take
Yeah, I'll
pictures.
bring it.
He's gonna let you know when the balloon's gonna be up.
Okay, I hadn't heard the motion for that, but if that's the direction, then we're good.
So moved.
wait a minute, not just the balloon test, right?
No,
But-
A
the,
digital model.
yes, sure.
Right.
Okay.
But that's part of it.
Right, in a sense, we're opting for the digital model, but we're gonna let the public know when the balloon test
It's gonna
is.
be hitched to.
That's part of that digital.
Great, I just wanted that all out in
Yes.
one place.
right.
How about, I'll keep a running list of all the information that we want, and at the end of the meeting, when we decide what date this hearing is gonna be continued to, we'll go through the list.
Make
and
sure you
make
can
one,
have it by then.
one clean motion at the end,
Perfect. Good for you.
and
Okay,
Sounds good.
that way
Good.
there's no gargling.
all right, so we'll move to public hearing. Everybody good? Everybody ready?
And if you can just ask people to state their names.
Yes,
And the only other thing is that because the visual stuff isn't known yet.
right,
Yeah.
we talked about that.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm gonna open the public hearing. We'll start with the butters, and then anyone else who lives in town is welcome to speak. When you're speaking, please identify yourself so that Steve can jot it down and know who it is, attribute remarks to the correct person. And we also, ask that you recognize that there's a lot more information to come in, particularly with the balloon test and the visual impact. And so you might want to reserve your comments on topics where we don't have much information yet for a later time. I will not close the public hearing, but rather continue it so that we can reopen at a later time when we have more information and hear specific comments about the newer information that we have. So if everybody's ready, we also ask you to try not to repeat comments, either your own or someone else's too much. I mean, you can say you agree with them, but let's not elaborate. We have a lot of people to go through and would like them all to get a good chance to say what they need to say, so. All right, who wants to start? Oh, one more point. Please remember to address the board, specifically the chair, and, don't, ask to be recognized. Just so we can keep this in some semblance of order. We rarely have to do that because we usually only have a few people and it's really informal. This has to be we have to run it a little tighter and try to keep things running smoothly. So, who's first?
I'm gonna just stand up so I can see. My name is Don Can. I am in a butter and I'm the person who also shares that road. According to my deed, I own to the center line of that road. And I do have a clause in there that mentions the town meeting. The date is like 1915. I can give you these specific points on, on that. My objections are to this project are several fold. I bought that land specifically for its rural character, having the conservation area behind there. I've spent about 35 years meshing my property with that land in a mini farm. I have an orchard, a sugar grove, a Christmas tree farm, and I maintain the upper areas for turkey and deer. This cell tower, again, we don't know the visuals, but it appears that it's going to be looming over my land. It's going to be very probably visible from my home. I have some health concerns about radiation. I don't know that much.
Let me make one point.
Sure.
Federal law says that as long as the tower and all the equipment is built according to specifications.
Okay,
We're not allowed to take any of that into account.
okay, understood. Okay. Yeah, so anyway, the visual will destroy my property value. Also, I feel that I have some say in how that road is used. All the neighbors have always used it for recreational, agriculture, and logging purposes. However, this is a big step. And a concern I have is if this project is approved, what else could be approved up there? Solar farms, whatever. It's a genuinely unique piece of land. There was a whole town up there at one point. And I don't want to see it, in my view, destroyed. Okay.
Who's next?
That's it.
I understand I'm in a butter to Phil's property, but not to the parcel. That's what I was told at the last meeting. So I'm sorry if so I'm somewhat of in the butter. I abut Phil's property. I live on Old Stagecoach Road. I have similar concerns to
Your
Don, Brian Hampton. Thank you. I have similar concerns to Don in that the area has a character. I've lived there now for 20 years and I'm there because of what it is, not because of what, this plan would turn it into. And when I hear about obviously this road's been used for 20 years before 1968, I feel like that's just pulled out of nowhere. That's not an obvious conclusion to me. But I feel like I would say something about the health concerns, but I understand we can't do that. But I have concerns about that as well. But it would, due to the fact that I have health concerns about it, I would consider moving away. And I would also take like a double whammy because I'd be losing property value because of the tower and considering to move away. And so I am very much against the whole notion of this thing here. I have fiber optic internet now in my house and my phone can use that. So I don't need cellular service in my house. And we don't have a lot of business on that area. We have homes and people at home, their phone can use their Wi-Fi for cellular service. No one is saying they want this. someone's just trying to make a little bit of money off of it.
Okay. Yes,
I'm Timothy Buzzell. And I am not a, but I am not in a butter.
well, let me ask Ben if there are butters that would care to speak first.
Don't forget Zoom land.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's some chats up there, Steve. Let's do.
Yeah, see what they're saying.
I think it goes back to the visual discussion.
Or we'll
Oh,
talk
okay.
about that at the end.
Yeah.
Ask whether there's any butters on the participate.
Right. I mean, if there are any abutters in Zoom land to the project, direct abutters, and you wanna testify, this would be a great opportunity to unmute yourself and say that.
Okay. Then you can go with
Yeah,
a resident instead.
once again, I'm Timothy Buzzell and I live on the corner of Methodist Hill Road and Route 120. Where the propeller that's not a propeller is. And I guess that my question is to Chris. In listening to you, it sounded to me as though the variance is a moot point. Because if it is denied, the client will then go to the federal government, whether it's FERC or FCC or whoever it is, and obtain the permit through them. So why are we even here?
Yes, you're right on the idea, although not the procedure. So I do think largely the variance criteria is moot, because again, if we don't meet it, the town would still have to grant it if we meet the federal criteria, but it's not a procedure of going to the federal government and getting the permit from them. The permit still comes from the town. It's just that the town is not allowed to deny it.
It would end up in the court if we denied it and they didn't think we denied it justly.
Yeah.
It would end up in federal court. I think the grounds that we would be talking about in terms of a denial would be if you didn't meet the requirements. That are put forth by the federal government.
Right.
And I think that's our main, that's how, where these cases have been fought in the past.
Yep, absolutely.
So. It's not specifically so much our variance criteria, it's more their variance criteria.
And then that's one of the reasons we're asking for what we're asking.
Right.
Because we know
Right.
what we,
Those are the things.
Yeah.
I remembered one more thing that some of the case law mentioned, and that was property evaluation studies. As being another piece of the potential effect and evaluation of variance criteria. That was the case in, well, I can't remember which town that was now, Hampton or something. Somebody down that way, Newfields, Hampton, I don't know.
There was a big one in Hampton pretty recently.
Yeah,
Does that answer your question, Mr. Buzzell?
I think it does. Still a little gray, but I'm satisfied.
Yeah, I mean, it can be a little complicated, but I mean, the reality is that the federal government kind of looks at it as wireless communication is a national thing, you know, so they want to leave some power with the towns and the states, but not all the power, because the federal government wouldn't want it to be such that, let's say, wireless communications are everywhere except Kansas. Well, if you have a hole in the middle of the network, the whole network drops off, right? You don't have coverage, you don't have a network anymore. I think that's sort of how I've always thought about it. So they kind of come in and set some guidelines.
Okay. Included in those guidelines are requirements for you to do certain things.
Right.
And that's, so far, that's what we're missing.
Well, so you all have identified things that you want to see to show that we've
If
done
you
those
didn't
things.
leave the last meeting understanding what we needed for visuals, then there was definitely a miscommunication.
That's.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It just feels ingenuous to me.
We've said
A
that.
month has
We've
gone
said that
by.
already.
No, it's the process. I mean, this is very, like in all these that I do, the balloon test. If we're gonna have one, we set the date at a meeting and tell everybody. And when I left here, it was my understanding that, so we continue this for the sole purpose of evaluating whether there was regional impact and sending notice to the other towns. That was the only thing we discussed at that level.
That's all we were allowed to discuss
Right.
at that point.
So when I received the letter from Mr. Halloran, it stated that we had requested a waiver, and the way I read it, I have it here, was that the board, I think, is to decide which one to do. So I came here looking for that decision.
Yeah.
That's how I read the letter, and I don't think I read it incorrectly.
Can I just,
go ahead.
on the topic of the federal goals here. I've been thinking about the federal purpose of deployment of cell towers. I've been equating that in my mind as I've been studying this, sort of like the deployment of telephone poles and electrical wires. Like the federal government sees this as the next evolution or the next iteration of communication. And in the same way that they wanted to facilitate telephone poles and telephone wires and electrical wires across the country, they want to do that with cellular service. And I saw this is RSA 12K again, which is the state law that talks about deployment of personal wireless service facilities. It says the Federal Telecommunications Act regulates the deployment of wireless services in the United States. Its purpose is to make these services available to the American people quickly and in a very competitive manner. And then nothing in this chapter is intended to preempt the Telecommunications Act. And the other thing I noted in here was that a statement of policy. It's the policy of this state to facilitate the provision of broadband and other advanced personal wireless services across the state. So that's, I read, is sort of like the state overlay on top of the federal overlay that sort of narrowly dictates the flexibility that we as a zoning board have in terms of approving or not approving this type of thing. Is that your experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a more eloquent way of saying what I said a couple of minutes ago, I think, but it's basically to foster competition and welcome new technology that, you know, the vast majority of people depend on. I can appreciate that not everybody does, and you know, if you were asking me my personal beliefs, I think perhaps wireless computers in our pockets could be the downfall of our society in general. But that's my personal opinion. That's not the law. But that is the reason behind it, to provide this service to the American people as a whole. It's that simple.
Let's get back to the public.
Yes. Yes, do we have any other comments from? Yes.
Lee Oxman. I had the privilege of representing Plainfield at the legislature for 8 years, and for 6 of them, I was on the Science, Technology, and Energy Committee. And we took testimony on 5G and other related issues with telecommunications. I think the RSA that you read is appropriate, and I think what it does tell us is that it's not simply cell phone that has to be encouraged to be allowed to be competitive, but all forms of these new technologies. We have fiber optic that's just become available, isn't just becoming available in the still. When you first probably brought up this proposal, that wasn't available. The fact that there is something that conforms with the rural conservation that is available, I think is a telling an element of this argument, that it's not necessary to impinge and on people's, possibly health, but certainly their property values and their aesthetic enjoyment of their properties, if there are alternatives, and alternatives exist. Thank you.
I have a few comments. I would like to add to that.
Would you identify?
Yeah, true, Eli Erickson. I live in this area, but on paper, I'm not in butter. And I'd like to add to what you said, that we have satellite service everywhere in this area, so there are alternatives. On the list of alternative site analysis, my wife and I, C, the letter C. And it says there on the list that we were unresponsive. We have never been contacted, so that your statement is untrue. And I would be concerned if an applicant is lying in the application. I would, in my book, that would be a reason for denial. Then I have a question. What are the transmission speeds? Half a mile, 1 mile, 2 miles from the tower?
The transmission speeds?
Yes,
I don't,
you don't?
no,
But you're the expert on that.
no, I'm the attorney.
So that you are saying that they may be no better than what we have already?
The transmission speeds?
Yes.
I'm not following the question.
This is,
That's not, it's not relevant.
right, I don't think, we're not talking about broadband here per se. I mean, that's one element of
No,
wireless
I
communication.
object. They are claiming an improvement, but you are not giving us any numerical data.
Oh, you're talking about, okay, the download and upload speeds of the server.
Correct.
That
How
varies.
fast would it be, say, half a mile, 1 mile, 2 miles from the tower?
So that has nothing to do with the distance from the tower, and it varies greatly, so there's no way to give you that number.
Give us the range?
And this,
What you promise?
this isn't specifically about internet. This is about a wireless communications gap that is being covered. Where there isn't any wireless communication.
We need a factual data. He's saying that we have a bad connection. Can't even describe how bad it is or how much better it will be with this power.
Need to address the
This
whole.
sounds a little bit
Yes,
like,
you need to talk to us first off, not the applicant.
yeah,
But I'm not, I mean, we have. In the application, there are RF coverage maps. That show where there is coverage and where
in
there
terms of
isn't.
megahertz, nothing in terms of transmission speeds.
We're not talking about transmission speeds right now.
Why not? That's what matters
This-
to me when I use my cell phone.
It's,
I mean, I can answer that question. So transmission speeds vary widely based on how much use is happening. So if, just like they would in your home with a wireless router, if there's one person using it, you're gonna get data flow at a certain speed. If there's 50 people using it, the rate changes. And wireless communication systems are the same way, and that's part of the reason why additional sites have become available since the proliferation of use by people from just phone calls to now essentially miniature computers in their pocket. So there's no way to say your speed will be this. It changes all the time. That's why you'll see every advertisement from every provider that provides the service. It's always the speed they offer you is up to.
You are wrong, and I disagree with you. It all depends on the transmission speed, and I wish that Atlantic Power would provide facts and not a bunch of words that don't mean anything. And I'm troubled by the lies that are in the application.
Okay,
Can I ask Mr. Erickson, just real quick.
Yep.
Are you also property A on this list?
No, property C, IDC, 198, 120.
Right, are you also 0 Chalice Road?
No,
No?
that's further down.
Okay,
That's someone else.
you own 4 parcels of land though, right?
That is correct.
Right.
Yeah,
I think.
I never said Chalice Road 0, but they may call it 0 Chalice Road.
I
Well,
think
they
that's
would
what
call it 0 because there was no number assigned to it, it's land only.
All right, then we have two lies in this application.
Well, so, and just for the record, you're not volunteering to be an alternate site.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
And
So it doesn't really matter if you were willing to, I mean, you should have been contacted, but you're not volunteering.
what they are saying, what bothers me is that they are lying in the application.
Well,
And that
let
is
me
not
find
fair.
out what the situation was. I'm not the person who did the contacting, so I don't know. There's two sides to every story. Let me find out. I will take the accusation back and see what I can find out.
It's not
That's-
an accusation, it's a fact.
Okay. I will find out what I can.
We've asked them to investigate and clarify those points. It is an allegation. But we'll
See what observation, it's not an allegation, it's an observation.
Your observation was that the information on the sheet was incorrect. From your point of view, that's a valid observation. They're gonna look into it and they're gonna report back to us. Okay,
My other question was, will lying twice, will that invalidate the application?
we have no proof that they were lying, that there was an intent to mislead us.
I can testify in court that they are lying.
It's,
I think we're done with this one. We're beating, well, I won't say that.
There's somebody else back there wanting to speak.
Yes, we have another person back there, yes.
So, I'm Jim Tracy and I live on Mains. And so I'm a little bit unique on this situation just because, we used to live in Grantham. We had a tower that was built directly across the road from us. We were there for 19 years. Our property values still almost doubled while we were there. We had lots of wildlife. My concern with this particular, application process on it is we have community here that needs to feel safe. I'm one of them. And the fact that we don't have connectivity is really a problem. Driving back and forth on 120, it is a risk. If you're out and you're in inclement weather or something along those lines, it is a risk. You know, I've experienced it myself. I've experienced it on the trails, you know, we're lightheaded, and stuff. But there is a certain responsibility here where we gotta make the community safe. You gotta make services available, on there. And that's what's important is, you know, people have to be safe when you're out. I know we had a flood right on Baines, you know, and our call dropped, calling for emergency services, right on Baines, you know, and as I was sitting here in this room, I was trying to connect to Wi-Fi and couldn't connect to Wi-Fi. You know, using, the guest, you know, 03770. That's how bad the connectivity is, right? And, you know, so it is, my concern is not so much about the communication. I can go to the bathroom without my cell phone. People doing that, you know, and I know there's a lot of people that can't do that. But if I'm out in the bout in a community, I want to know that if I need services, or if I run across somebody who needs services, that I can get them help, or I can get myself help. And right now, I can't do that. You know, so, you know, that's where I think that this is important, is I think that it's for the safety of the community that we have to have this. That's what I'm gonna say.
Thank you.
So I'll go next. I'm Leslie Pearson. I live at 82 Route 120. I'm a neighbor of Don's, not a direct abutter, but once removed. my reading of the Telecommunications Act and other surrounding laws, like you guys said earlier, you can't talk about the health risks. You can't talk about radio frequency propagation and all that as a reason for denying it. And you can't make a process so Byzantine that nobody could get through it. That's all the federal law says. You guys still have the power to say where the tower goes and where it doesn't. So I disagree. I thought I heard a statement earlier, which if you don't let us have what we want, we're just gonna get it anyway. That's not how I read federal law and the other case law around it. Location of the towers and the appearance of the towers is specifically seated for the zoning boards, from my understanding. So the talk about the road being public, I had a question for you guys. Who's got the burden? They have to prove it? Do you guys have to prove it? Does Don have to get a lawyer? Don says the road's private to the halfway mark. The cell tower people say they're gonna use the half that is the other abutter, the other property owner. Brian is right when he said you should go look at the road in the daytime, because that half is about yay wide. I don't know how they're gonna get construction vehicles up a road using, you know, Phil's half.
It's not a
So-
road.
It's not a road,
Right.
so who's,
If they were going to rely on that, the 1 year use making it a public road, then they would need to
burden on
prove
that?
that. I would think so.
Okay,
I
It would
certainly-
be on us, and,
Yes.
but like I said, we're not going to do that, because it's much easier to use the
All right.
other half. And
So
to-
that's a red herring. We can just forget we ever heard anything
Yes,
about it.
we were discussing, but yes, that's off the table.
And if you're saying that you're going to access the site, just on the, green property, then, there's nothing much we can say about that.
If- I mean,
Shifting over on the road.
It doesn't have to be on the road itself, it could be over, even further over.
okay,
Right.
so we're talking about going up on green property, not on that particular,
If,
not on the
if,
road.
if that's what they choose to
Be on
do.
that piece, but it's not critical that it is. I mean, they have the right to do that. I mean.
He owns the land.
The Greens have the right
Yeah, yeah.
to allow them to do that, put it that way.
Yeah, maybe I can
So-
point out that the points you've made are all valid, and I should have explained it clear. Yeah, we'd have to expand off the road a little bit. We even looked at where we might have to relocate a stone wall and bring it back when we're done as well. So, yes, you're correct. We wouldn't just be staying on the half of the road. We'd have to go on the green property as well. I also do agree with your take on federal law too. You know, the town does have the right to dictate where it goes and what it looks like. However, it still has to work to achieve the objective. And as you said, it can't be a Byzantine, really an overly cumbersome requirement. But yeah, you are right. That is the federal law.
The other part is the part of old Stagecoach or Stagecoach that is town maintained. It's, I don't wanna say it's unimproved, but it's, you know, it's mashed gravel and, you know, aggregate with sand and mud and all the stuff that goes along with that. Construction traffic on that, if you guys eventually approve this as the site, you should put it as a condition of the approval that they have to maintain the road then.
Is that, it,
I mean, I suspect there will be some discussions during any building permit process with the selectmen about how the road's gonna be handled.
Right.
And so I think if we get to that point, absolutely, I mean, that becomes part of it. Right now, there's not a great turnaround there's all sorts of issues. Our experience with towers is that once the construction is over, and it's a relatively short period of time, but once the construction is over, then the trips to the tower from people from the company are pretty limited. It's not a lot of truck or vehicle traffic. It is intense while they build it.
The other part of that, building on that point, is their CAD drawing. I've highlighted 4 areas on there that say future lease areas. Does that mean that there's 4 other towers?
no, that's where their equipment would be.
So that's the boxes that we were talking about earlier. Okay. Thank you. And the last point that I had is in the analysis of alternatives, which we've had some discussion about. So this is the gap that they've identified. This brown line, where'd it go? Right here, you can see my highlighter, there's a brown line, that's the town line. There's one property that isn't on their list of alternatives, and that's that old dump of a mill up 120 in Lev. Now, I know it doesn't have the elevation that all the rest of their sites have, but the view shed, the look angle for a tower of whatever height covers, I don't know, 90% of the gap that they've identified. And when we're talking about trade-offs, maybe 90% putting a tower in an industrial site is the proper trade-off. And I know you guys don't have the power to tell them to put it there, that would be Lev's problem, but the fact that that site exists and it is already an industrial site, that is the perfect place for this, and not in the middle of our neighborhood with all the attendant construction traffic going up and down the road. It's right next to 120, there's no worry about private roads and all the rest of that. So I think that that alternative, the fact that it exists, it hasn't been pursued, that's a reason to deny the application in and of itself.
Well, we can certainly look into that as well.
Yes.
I don't know if that was looked at preliminarily and ruled out for some reason. I don't know.
Like I said, it doesn't have the elevation, but the gap that you've identified that goes north on
I
120,
understand what you're saying.
it's pretty flat. So you wouldn't really need like a hillside location to get to that.
Yeah, and so, you know, to be clear, our objective here is to put up a tower that provides the service, and that's the business that my clients are in. So we're not wedded to any particular site, unlike a developer who may come in here who has a property and wants to build 15 condominiums or something. That's not us. I mean, for logical reasons, we don't actually care where this goes. We will go where it works. So we will certainly look at that. That's not a problem at all. But one point I would add to that is that the actual location of the tower is not necessarily indicative of the impact on the view. So while that, and I don't know for this site, but you put it at a particular site where, let's say, nobody cares about that site, but where you see it from is different, right? So that part does matter. And so that the fact that a site may be an abandoned industrial site might make it great for what's on the ground, but no one really sees this one from the ground either. It's where do you see the top of the tower and how much of an intrusion is that? And that may or may not be better from that particular alternative site. But we can take a look at it for sure. I'll put that on the list as well. It's not difficult for us to do, and frequently within these proceedings, we end up looking at other sites as well. I don't know that we've ever ended up, yeah, we have actually. At times we have ended up going to different places. I can remember specifically an instance in Massachusetts where at first we contacted a landowner and they said, no way. And then the town contacted that landowner and the landowner changed his mind. So we don't rule it out. I'm happy to look at it.
I have a question that dovetails with what you just said, so jump in and ask it. You gave us the list of sites A through H. Is there a reason why A through H were the chosen sites and other sites like the one that was just mentioned weren't considered? Were these the top 10 most likely, or how do you create that list?
Yeah, so it's mostly based on the experience of the site acquisition specialist who does sort of a preliminary, and things are ruled out. For instance, a small lot with a residential home, we rule that out right away because it's, while it's possible, it's not viable. It's not likely that that person will be interested. So they have what is essentially a search ring, and that's kind of that red ring you see there. And they do look at all the properties in that ring for what would work. Topography is a big part of it.
Yeah, if you look at this, the page 2 of that, where they have
There's
the
topographical.
topographic, you can see they're all like knobs.
They're you want elevation,
They're
right?
all
Because
elevated.
To
the
some,
higher,
yeah,
the higher the ground is, the shorter the tower needs to be.
to some extent. It's a little more nuanced than that, because if you get too high, then you're actually covering too many people and you get into a capacity issue. That's not gonna be so much an issue in a place like Plainfield, but like, for instance, if you were to do it, I just pick a city like Boston. Okay, you can put something very high, but now you're covering too many people and that tower can't handle all the traffic that's on it. So there's a little more science to it, and there's kind of a sweet spot, but here generally height is going to be a driving factor. So while when you look at one of those properties, it may say, oh, it looks big, it looks great, but if it's low, and more importantly, if there are knobs around it or between it and the place with substandard coverage, that's gonna rule it out because the tower won't penetrate or
Is it basically line of sight? The tower needs line of sight to provide service?
it's not exactly line of sight because it's radio frequency, so it can penetrate certain things and it radiates.
It bounces, it bounces, it can bounce too.
Yeah, so it's like line of sight, but it's not exactly line of sight.
But having rain in the way will impact the frequency propagation. Trees are okay, but terrain usually.
And then it's like, some trees are okay, you know, if they get too many trees, it won't go through it, but, you know, a stand of trees, yes, it goes through that, but if you're trying to go through 300 yards of dense forest, not so much, so it can get a little complicated, and to say that it's line of sight would not be accurate, but it's like line of sight.
All right. Yeah, as I was looking at the different sites, and site H was the one that I asked about first. And the comment about that was that it wouldn't have, high terrain blocks the coverage to the south.
Yeah.
And so that's the one that's the reason that you felt that one was less ideal, was because there were some knobs in the way, I guess, that would block.
Yeah, it's not gonna provide coverage to the south. And then so one of my questions on my homework list is, you know, why do you guys care about coverage to the south? And we'll look into that. And I'll talk to the RF engineers and get you a better answer than me making it up.
I did have one last question for the board. If that site is developed with a tower on it, does that drop it out of current use?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, oh, yes. The area to support the tower comes out of current use.
Just the little leased area?
In the driveway up to it and all of that, and it was just like you building a house, I mean, and the construction, the developed area can't be in current use. The field around it, the woods around it can continue to be in current use. Assuming the owner has 10 acres, that's clear, to put in current use, clear meaning not developed, not. And so the expectation would be that there is a current use penalty, but it is also that some of the land would continue to stay in current use.
Okay, do we have any other residents or butters that?
Yeah, I'm a Zoom person. Can I speak? My name is Rob Healy, and I'm 2 driveways down from Old Stagecoach Road. I'm on Route 120. I would like to suggest to the zoning board that they all go down Ahita Road in Lebanon and look at the tower that is right behind the Elks building, the Elks Lodge on Ahita Road. And if you want to see the visual impact of a cell tower, take a look at that tower, which is probably in the 130-foot range, and you can see it all the way up to the top of Centera. And let me tell you, it's an eyesore. And a tower that tall on the top of Old Stagecoach Road, where we all go hiking and do bird watching and listen to our owls and see our deer and our moose, that would really impact our use of that property. So go take a look, and I welcome all of my neighbors to go take a look at that cell tower on Ahita Road in Lebanon. And I don't know if that's one of Atlantic's towers, but if it is, maybe you could tell me exactly how tall that is at our next meeting. In reading over your application, I found it interesting that at one point you said that the tower was specifically designed for 4 antennas. But on another part of the application, it says it is designed to accommodate at least 4 wireless providers. To me, that's a difference. Is it specifically designed for 4, or is it designed for at least 4? And that could also impact the visibility of that tower. I also was happy to hear some people, Lee and others, talk about alternatives to these cell towers. This is a technology that is advancing rapidly. And I know the last time I went through the Tip O'Neill Tunnel in Boston, which is a mile long under the city, I was able to maintain a telephone conversation on my cell phone in my car. So are there alternatives to cell towers that might be coming in the next year or two? Small antennas that could utilize telephone poles and have relay antennas. I don't know what you'd call them. I'm not technically equipped to suggest any technology, but I'd like to see the exploration of alternatives to a cell tower, 130 feet tall, in an area that I've lived with for 22 years, and would not be acceptable to seeing a tower built within it. Probably it's about 1,000 feet from my house. So go take a look at that tower down on Heater Road before you make any decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are you familiar with that tower? No. That's one with all the external antennas. Is this?
I can find out, anything you want.
No,
to know
I've seen
about
it.
just let me know.
I've seen it plenty of times. I don't know the height, but I was just trying to compare it with what we're talking about here. Are you talking about external antennas like that, or are you talking about a monopole round stick?
So a monopole is a round stick, but then the antennas are on the top and they're external. I mean, if
Okay.
you look at.
I don't think you can scale a tower where they're all inside. and there's a-
Well, all three of the existing towers in town
Yeah,
are all round sticks.
Well, except the one on Freeman's got pine lights.
The second part.
It's.
Oh, that's right.
it's
The
got-
one up on
yeah,
top of Freeman.
Has pine,
Yeah,
has,
you're right.
I mean, picture's worth 1,000 words. If you look at the elevation, that's what it is.
Yeah, okay. And that is very similar to the one on Heater Road. I don't think it has 4 customers on it.
Well,
But
I looked
maybe-
at it the other day and it did have 4 exterior antennas on it.
Okay, well, I haven't worked up that way in a few years, so maybe things have changed a little, but.
Assuming at 130 feet, there's no lighting, right? It's
No lighting.
There's no lighting. The Lebanon Airport doesn't change that or anything. It's just no lighting.
Can you speak to the 4 versus at least 4? Is it?
Oh, yeah,
One
the
or the
idea is,
other?
right, so right now, every 10 feet is considered a rad center in our industry. That's a space that a carrier would lease. And that's generally what they use right now, but that could change in the future. I mean, technology can make it such that they get smaller. And also, if somebody says, hey, we'd like to lease some space down low on the tower, we would be amenable to that. We don't think anyone would have any interest in that right now because it would be covered by the trees, but if technology changes, you know, the law is such that it encourages that. So right now, it's designed for 4 with what we know today, but things change.
Okay, so you're still talking the existing tower, and the existing tower you're gonna build is designed for 4. And if technology allowed in the future, the existing tower might be put to use for more than that if it becomes feasible.
But it wouldn't change the height.
Right, it wouldn't change that height.
Okay, the applications say 130 feet plus or minus. Could you tell me what the parameters are on the plus or minus?
Well, so there's typically a copper grounding rod at the top that's 3 to 4 feet that you really can't see even with binoculars, but it's there. The measurements of the ground can vary a little bit with grading, so that's what the plus or minus is there for. Field conditions are such that when you're putting up a 130-foot antenna, you cannot control things down to about an inch when it comes to foundation heights and grading. So, you know, while it may be 130 feet when it's built, and if there is 2 inches of gravel laid after, now it's 129 feet and 10 inches. It's speaking to things like that. This is pretty typical in any sort of engineering. The height is not going to be given with that level with the level of precision when grades can be changed, and grades almost always change a little bit.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yes, can I say something?
Well, somebody said that.
Who else?
Hello?
John?
Yes.
Okay, John. Go
So
ahead.
I'm John Austin. I live across the street on 120. And I have 2 other sites that should have probably been looked at. And one would be up on Methodist Hill at the turnaround spot where the school bus turns around. You wouldn't have to go as high, and it's on the road. And then the next slot up is where the log landing is and an old road. Why weren't those looked at?
Can you identify, like, you need maybe a tax map number, or I don't know where the turnaround or the log landing is.
Those just came to me
Oh.
as the meetings came on.
Right, I think if you were looking on tax maps, look at the Patches Orchard. It's property owned by Walhausen Farm in Lebanon, that it's forested land, but I think it's owned by the Patch family, if you were looking at Lebanon's assessing records.
Look, let me, and Steve can help you with that.
Well, although
I'm
it's
finding it.
it's in the, it's not, it's outside of Plainfield, it's just over the
Right.
line.
Okay, so that's one thing. And then
Patches.
the other thing is, if you went with the mill site or the old sawmill site, is there a way to do a small, just at tree level, maybe somewhere else, that would broadcast it elsewhere? Because you're really looking for more north coverage than south coverage.
So what's the question?
You're looking for more coverage
South.
north than south.
Yeah, the spot with deficient coverage now is more north from this site, correct?
Correct. And because I drive that road every day from the corner, just past Rob's house, I get cell service. I go up Methodist Hill, I have cell service. Why aren't you looking closer towards Lebanon?
So if there are, so you've given me the 2 sites in Lebanon you want me to look at. But in terms of why we aren't looking farther into Lebanon, so that is precisely explained in the application materials. There's an area where we have identified a site will remedy the gap. And that area is, we call it a search ring. It's red in the materials that we submitted. And we look at the sites in that area. Now, it is entirely possible that maybe something on the fringe we overlooked. Doesn't happen very often, though. But if the sites you're talking about aren't in that area, we determine that it's not going to provide the coverage objective. If you want us to specifically drill down on a particular site, we can do that and prove it to you.
I would think that the 2 on Methodist Hill would be,
I need to know more than the 2 on Methodist Hill.
well, Steve can direct you in that because he understands what I'm talking about.
They're still gonna be in the red ring.
Is there a way I can get like something I can identify
Yeah,
other than the 2 on Methodist Hill? I can't
Steve,
work
Steve
with
and
it.
I can find them.
Right,
for you.
I think literally, if you went to the Lebanon
Picture.
If you went to the Lebanon tax maps and looked up Patch, P-A-T-C-H. They own a massive amount of land, of which some of it will be touching Methodist Hill, where John is talking.
Okay, so.
I mean,
it's the patch. land,
right.
the Ones that are touching Methodist Hill.
Yes, that's the area he's talking about.
Okay.
I mean, I'm guessing Matt Decker's gonna
Maybe I'll try.
find it on the Lebanon site for you right now.
So Steve and the board, I have one more question.
Okay.
Uh,
This is to the board. So if they put the road in, now I know that they're gonna have to do a lot of work to put a road in there. are there setbacks that have to figure in with all that?
If they were using driveways and things, they have to stay on their own land, but there is no setback for the driveway. We do common driveways right on the lot line, so if they
Okay.
want to use their half of Old Stagecoach Road, they could do that.
Okay, so they could drive
What's
right
gonna
up to
happen-
this.
But I think the reality is they won't do that because the site work is so massive that the
No
expense gets so high that it just doesn't make sense. They would get to the tower site through Phil's property, or Phil would say, no, you won't, the deal's off, or something of that nature, but I don't think they're gonna bulldoze all the material on the other side on their side of Old Stagecoach Road. It's just a massive amount of
Well,
material.
that's what I was wondering. Okay, that's all for me.
We have ways of doing it. We do it with helicopters sometimes, like, we don't need to build a road. You know, there needs to be access to it for a truck to get there, but.
But again, you guys will figure that out.
Yes,
That's where I'm going.
it's not this board's problem, luckily.
Are you saying, Mr. Halloran, that a driveway does not have to have a setback from an adjacent property owner?
Yes. It's not a structure. So there's no setback in our ordinance. In fact, the planning board requires them on the lot lines sometimes because they split and go in two different directions.
That surprises me.
Okay. Something surprises me every day. So,
I think we've.
My driveway's not even on my land.
Okay,
well, we're getting to that magic 9 o'clock hour.
Yeah.
It's usually when
Here's
we.
the picture, we're not building the driveway.
right. Okay, so are we good for now? I'm gonna, suspend the public hearing so that we can bring it back when we have more information. And you guys can comment on new information, and maybe it'll answer some of your questions, and maybe it'll bring up new ones.
And much of that information will be available prior to the meeting.
Well, let's have that conversation.
Yes.
Well, that's what we're gonna talk about now. that-
Because our next meeting. would
Now
be-
that I've suspended the
Yeah,
public
okay.
hearing.
So our next meeting would be May 11th. And so by May 11th, will you have done the balloon test and have a visual analysis?
Well, why don't we do it in June, because, like, I don't know, and I don't wanna commit for someone, for them they've got to find good weather, do it. And then produce the product, that might be tough, why don't we say your June meeting?
So we would continue this hearing to June 8th, which is
Okay.
the second Monday in June.
Yeah,
That will actually, in some ways, helps your agendas, because you can clear up some other stuff at in May. Mr. Koff is ready to come back, or he's hired counsel and working on his ADU. But it is, but to be clear to the abutters and to be clear to the record, we're going, as soon as we know when there would be a balloon flown out, we'll send out a round of notices. We'll send them just regular US mail, but we'll send them notices and we'll post it on the town website. So check in on the ZBA page on a regular basis, but we'll let you know when we know. But this case would be heard again, continue on June 8th.
okay.
And then Matt was working on a list that we wanted to be sure we were clear on with the applicant, so there isn't confusion.
So the items I heard were visual
Well, I
analysis.
really appreciate your cooperation. You really made it, make a huge.
With the balloon date.
Right, with pre-warning of the balloon date.
It's where.
Okay, so.
Yeah, so the visual analysis with the pre-warning of the balloon date so that Steve can let everybody know when that is gonna be. With respect to the list of sites that you did look at. For the ones that were listed as landowner unresponsive, an explanation of what reach out was done and what responses you did or didn't receive
Okay.
for each of those.
Do you want to go further down the list? Like if you talk about that being the top 10 or whatever, we wanna ask for,
That, that dovetails with Ms. Pierce's point about, she said the sawmill site. John Austin said the patch forest land. That dovetails with my bigger question, and I think Ms. Pierce's point is, if we've got to do an analysis of effective prohibition, i.e. we have to grant a variance because if we don't allow a cell tower on this site, we're effectively prohibiting a cell tower to serve this neighborhood. I think we do need a deeper dive onto what other sites
we'll consider.
are or are not feasible. Because this lot that we're talking about is in the RC2 where you need a variance, right? But the rest of Plainfield all the way around it, 270 degrees more or less, is cell towers by special exception. And once you cross the city line into Lebanon, that whole area up there is also cell towers by special exception. So while I think we have the authority to grant a variance if we have to, so as not to effectively prohibit cell service, we need to do the legwork of figuring out if there are other feasible sites or multiple sites or compromises where a variance isn't required.
Is it our burden to do that analysis? Like they essentially raise the question or say, make the statement, we've chosen the best site. Is it up to us to analyze all the other sites and say no, or is it ours to say, we understand you looked at these 10, we understand you rejected the others, can we see that data? So we understand the basis for the rejection, so that we can be persuaded that they've chosen the best site.
Is that not the same thing?
Well,
I believe it is the applicant's burden.
Yeah.
To demonstrate that they've made an effort, a significant effort to find other sites that don't.
Because otherwise the federal.
well, that's sort of my
law
point.
Wouldn't,
Is, but at some point you have a set of potential sites, right?
Yep.
Whatever, however many million that is.
The
And they represent that they made a good faith effort, and here are the top 10, and really, this is the one. And we are not persuaded of that, at least yet. Whose burden is it to conduct that analysis and show that process?
Yeah.
So the burden for the carrier invoking the effective preclusion standard. This provision is a heavy one. The burden for the carrier invoking this provision is a heavy one to show from language or circumstances, not just that this application has been rejected, but that further reasonable efforts are so likely to be fruitless that it is a waste of time to even try.
Okay.
It's our burden.
So show us the line, what was your tipping point that said,
Well, you might even
These are
say to
all-
them, go, I mean, if he's a willing owner, go try to get the special exception in Lebanon.
Right.
And
Right, that's what I'm getting
if you
at.
bring us a denial, then okay, you tried, but,
Yeah.
but like Elof, I mean, Elof said, I got great site. Nobody's ever contacted me, but I don't wanna do it, and so, you know.
they
so-
aren't required to go do the analysis of the lot.
but he
I get that.
but he had to show a good faith effort,
Right.
and Elof was pretty upset that.
Yeah, right,
That meant that other people probably
Maybe.
didn't.
And that's.
right, I'm sure
That's
his
just
One of those
consultant,
sites might have been a really good one.
right, his consultant will have certified mail that he sent,
Yeah,
or he won't,
exactly, right.
Yeah.
right? I mean, and we'll learn from that.
It looked to me, just going through the list of A through H, that either they were gonna be right on top of somebody's house, like
Right, you could understand why.
Hasanari
it
or
might have been rejected.
Erickson or
Yep.
whoever the third one was, and so those are no-goes.
Mhm.
The other ones were all in the middle of the woods where you're talking about cutting lots of trees to build an access road. Except for H was the one it looked like was already a
Mhm.
cleared site. And it didn't indicate that the owner was unresponsive or unwilling, it just indicated a blockage to the south or
Yeah, and Methodist Hill Road is the same road that John Austin was talking about.
Right, this would be on the south side of the road,
Right.
but,
Like, and I can't, I mean, not to speak for them. Patches on hundreds of acres and they're a farm, which is always cash strapped. I would be shocked if they weren't at least interested if their land technically worked it.
Right.
It may not technically work there and it may not achieve the goal, but they would, because as Matt says, they're right on the road. There's nobody around within hundreds of feet of that site. Now, and I'm sure you are shifting the thing to someone else at that point, right? There is some other abutter who's gonna say, well, thanks. I didn't want the goddamn, thing either, but it may be a site that doesn't need a variance and somebody should ask.
And that is a legitimate. Is that a legitimate position for us to take in saying no here because?
Well,
We don't say no,
Right.
we say it's not yet.
Well,
It's not no, it's not yet.
the goal is for them to give us enough information about alternatives that
That you feel like
either
they've
did
lost.
consider or should have considered,
And that there's a.
to give us confidence
Yeah,
that they really did their job. Because that's what it's based on, is our confidence in them doing the job. And maybe a judge would have a different opinion on
Yeah,
whether or not they did
and
the
the
job.
court could go both ways. There could be people in the audience who
Sure.
say, well, they shouldn't have given them a variance. And we need to be able to show that we
Yes,
did the work.
I got
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep,
All right, you guys ready to go to bed? I am.
pretty close.
Hold on, I need my homework list.
Ah,
Yeah.
sorry, yes, I was thinking sleep, my apologies.
Max,
Yeah, driving an hour and a half.
Yeah, well.
was there anything else that I didn't?
You are, of course you are.
I had a request, and I think this goes along with my interest in property H. Is we've got the map of current coverage, right?
Yeah,
And then we've got the map of what this proposed tower would give. And then we've got the map of like the yellow over the green. I would like to see like yellow and green makes blue for the areas where
coverage is gained.
Net gain.
coverage already exists. And then there's overlapping coverage, because I think that would help with the question of like interest in the north versus interest in the south, and how much is being gained in the south versus how much is being gained in the
I
north.
thought
I
it was
don't know if that's
interesting.
something you can do.
It looked
It's
like
something we
the
could
gap,
do. The only thing,
coverage are exactly
let me
the
just
same.
finish writing this. The only thing I would caution, that's not the whole story.
Okay.
Because where there is coverage today, you can still improve it. And that's that capacity issue I was talking about for the future, where it's like, okay, it may work great for the current. I just throw a number out there, 100 people using it. If 200 people are expecting, it may be insufficient at that point. So there's an idea of improving the quality where there still is existing coverage as well.
Mhm.
So I can do that, but just it's not completely dispositive of the situation.
Understood.
All right, so where is coverage being gained? Now, so in terms of, but I want to get this alternative site analysis correct. So, what I can usually do, what I think solves the issue, because what you guys are discussing is not the first time I've heard this. So we have this search ring, which is generally a ring of all the properties that could potentially provide the coverage. And that's based really just on geography, we put it in
I'm
a
out.
model. Well, I don't know if that was, but, and I can go through all of those properties. What it is that many of them are ruled out, as I was saying before, without significant analysis, because it's like, okay, we know it's too low, or we know it's blocked, or we know it's a 1 acre lot with a house on it, or it's a school. So I can give you that if you'd like, that's not a problem, and we'll cover everything in that search ring. That should put that issue to bed and give us basically, and that will lead you to the 10 or however many sites we have, because that is how we do it, literally. It's just, we don't document the stuff that is obvious, because it's too much. I mean, this is a rural area, but you're still talking about probably 100 properties. Whereas we don't you know, we don't need to do a whole lot of analysis to know that the 20 lots on the other side of it aren't gonna do the job. We don't need to look farther than the topographical map to figure that out. But I can do that, you know, I think that'll shed some light on this and explain it. What I would like to do as well, though, for these specific sites that people have discussed, I want to do an analysis on those and get it to you, and I want to nail down what those sites are, because what we can do, so very easy for us to plug it into radio frequency models and generate the kind of coverage we'll get. So that's step one, will it do the job? And then step two, we make a call. Are you interested, to the landowner? That's the analysis. That's all there is to it. And if the landowner says yes, then the analysis is three, is this feasible? You know, is this gonna cost us $10 million to do? Is it going to be very difficult? Are we gonna be up against a town that is very problematic, which I think Lebanon actually is, but it's, I do problem towns, so don't worry. I'm not worried about that part, but there's a reason for why we pick these, and I don't have every single detail, because it's a matter of, you know, are we gonna sit here and talk about every detail for 8 hours, or do I give you the gist? So I can give you deeper information. That's not a problem at all. I'm happy to do so. But let's nail down those sites. So first one is H on the list. And then the next one is the old sawmill. How else am I gonna find that one?
You can certainly see it on Google Earth. I mean, it's right at the Plainfield Lebanon line. There is a sawmill.
I'll show it to you here on the
I
GIS
was just
map.
gonna say, you can,
When you go through your list of why we discontinued stuff or why.
Yeah, so it's in our search ring?
Oh, yeah, this is all in your,
Okay.
so your lot is here in Plainfield, right?
Yeah.
So the sawmill here is 215
Yeah,
-2.
so much woods around it, it looks small.
it's just north of the stream.
Yeah.
If you've got a
Great,
decent
yeah,
map.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 215-2 in Lebanon,
Okay.
and then
always wondered.
on
Used to.
both sides of,
You many years ago.
it's mostly Lebanon, but then in Plainfield, this is all patch forest.
Okay.
And then it's mostly sugaring operation.
Yeah.
And I think they own a couple of lots up here in,
And then once you get on the plane,
in
you're on your own.
Plainfield as well.
That's a different
We'll
issue.
see.
Oh,
So,
Yeah.
um,
That's not us. Right. You guys.
Yeah, you know,
It's like.
they own one across.
That's exactly.
Just before town
Hey,
meeting,
Steve.
contacted them.
If you go down-
If we can establish whether green
Yeah.
has a need on it, you know, person to.
Yeah, this
We've got
is-
quite a little.
You can ask him right there.
Like,
Does green have an E on the end or no?
Okay, so there were some, you know.
Also, there's no.
Car, Hub 66 decals on it, probably putting flyers indoors or something over on the.
So it's Phil Green with an E.
Phil Green with an E.
Got it.
Philip Green,
Phil.
one L with an E on.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay,
it's that-
well,
it's that
Any new
historic-
ones should be
Yeah,
considered.
probably for legal representation, it should say Philip with one L,
Sit
Green with an
actually
E.
over the border.
No Karen on any of those properties.
There is some.
And no
I'm
multiple.
not familiar with it about kicking it to another town.
For notification.
I don't remember, it doesn't happen that much, but if you're curious, you can look into it. I don't think it's gonna be a factor here, but.
Can we adjourn?
I think we're close.
Yeah, we're just gonna,
Yeah, so
making sure that we have this.
All right, so I got my list.
Well, that's.
Any other homework?
So go ahead and go ahead and run us through your list one quick time so we all agree.
All right, so I've got number H, or sorry, letter H on our alternative site analysis. I've got the old sawmill, which is map 215, lot 2 in Lebanon. And then basically just all the patch land in Lebanon that would be within the search ring.
And give us a better comment on the evaluations of the others.
Yes, he's gonna give us a lot more data on what they looked at.
Yeah.
Not just H, but the other.
Yes. And
Elof
some of
was
them-
pretty upset that he hadn't been contacted. He owns 2 of these lots, I guess.
The explanation for A through H, what reach out was done and what responses.
So,
were
yeah,
received.
right, so on the unresponsive owners, what reach out was done? Got it.
And he's a pretty detailed person. It's hard to believe that he would have missed a contact, but
And then there's the
Known
whole cell tower, the whole balloon test
Yeah,
thing.
visual.
Dates and all of that, and then the visual
Number one on my
analysis.
list.
But it's really not a ZBA balloon test. It is the balloon test that's required so that they can do the visual analysis.
Right.
We're just gonna let folks know about it so they can look for the balloon if they want to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it might be kind of quick,
And,
but.
it sounded like some of the people might be happy to, as Matt suggested, let them on private land, so that people could say,
We will have-
this
we will
is
have-
from my
Want to
place.
do a sign-up sheet or something?
I'll figure that out, but
Yeah.
we will find a way to communicate to people. If you wanna have the consultant come and take a photo from your property, this is how you do it.
I was just thinking of like, for example, the Ericksons are on a hilltop straight to the south, so without going in their house, they might want to know a shot from the top of their driveway or something.
Yep, understood. And there's, as you can imagine, some issues there. I don't know how comfortable they are with going on someone's land. I just don't know. But what they can do too, if they're around when the balloon is flying, they can take a picture of the balloon too. But I'll see, you know, if they're willing to do it, then fine. Yeah, it's not extra work necessarily for us. It's more, I just don't know if they have any discomfort in that for liability reasons.
Yeah.
And again, like I was saying, it depends. Like if it's just go to my driveway and take a picture, sure. But if it's cross the stream on a wet log or something like that, it's different.
So what is this, visual model gonna look like? Is it gonna be a series of 2D picture kinds of
Yep.
things?
We had one of those before in one of the previous cases, which was quite a while ago.
Right, I
But I
think you'll see Google Earth shots with the tower on it.
No, there'll be real shots.
Real shots. with the
Yeah,
tower.
they're-
But
Because-
from where, other than, we've talked about
Public
other
roads.
people's
Yeah, so what they'll
public
do,
roads?
yeah, they'll fly a balloon and they'll send a crew or two out in cars, literally pair of two guys. One's looking for the balloon, one's driving the car. When they spot it, they stop, take a picture of it,
Mhm.
and then they will import a model of the actual tower.
Right.
With
And
the,
superimpose on it.
yeah, superimpose it. It's that part of it is not that scientific.
Well, it's more, my question is, where's the view from? Like, how do you determine? Are you doing it every 1,000 yards along 120, or are you doing it in 4 places that are?
So what they usually do, they're gonna hit all the public roads.
Mhm.
Within generally where it would be reasonable, right? I mean, if it's,
I mean, you're going back to the red ring kind of area, or is it not that?
I mean, the red ring area, like from 2 miles away,
Yeah,
it doesn't matter if it's visible, you can't really see it. You know, so they kind of use some professional discretion, and most of the ones that I give you, you'll see, like, they'll point it out and you would never see it if it wasn't pointed out. So they'll go beyond what you're looking for.
And is this the place, and I'm trying to remember in our ordinance, it's been a decade or more since we've done one of these.
Yeah.
It's either the site, and you may wanna do the work now, save your client some money. Somewhere in our ordinance, we require you to do a survey of surrounding canopy.
I guess it's supposed to be 10 feet or
Right,
something like
right,
that.
tree height around, there's a magic height that you can't be over the roof top with a tower and playing field. And you have to show the canopy, the average height of the canopy, so that you're not above that number.
and does that, I mean, so say we determine that it is in violation of that.
Well, I guess,
In
Is
the-
that we right back at the Fed?
In
Yeah.
the special
Looking at-
exception criteria for a cell tower. One of the application requirements, F6, it's an average height of vegetation within 100 feet of the proposed facility. And then on item E, standards, it says height regardless of the type of mount, wireless communications facilities shall not be higher than 10 feet above the tree canopy height measured from ground level at the base of the tower. Of course, since we're talking about a variance instead of a special exception,
Yes.
then these conditions don't apply. We can negotiate conditions that go along with the
and
variance.
I guess the question I was asking, is that data that has value to the ZBA or not?
No, it was always so problematic, it was almost useless.
It's completely useless, I can tell you, because so what you're saying is only one carrier can be on the tower. Right, because you don't put it under the trees, the trees are a problem, it has to get over the trees, so if you're only allowing 10 feet, you're allowing one carrier. And so what you're saying is every carrier has to build their own tower. You don't want that.
Which is in conflict with our own ordinance too.
And conflict with your ordinance, conflict with federal law, so the exercise becomes pretty much useless. In fact, we have argued in some places that you're just trying to waste our money by making us do that for the reasons we just discussed. And we've been pretty successful on that. You know, I get it that people wrote that in the past and said, hey, this sounds like a good idea, but it doesn't work. You can't hide a tower in a forest. It wouldn't work. If we could, we would. We don't. All we want to do is provide the coverage so that we can lease it out.
And we will at some point, or the planning board will, if it gets to the planning board, we'll have to have the pine tree discussion. You know, is it gonna have branches, right? I mean, that's,
Camouflage.
you know, you got the one on 89 that everybody says looks like a bottle brush. But I can show you the one on Freeman Hill, the pine trees, the branches make all the difference.
That's good.
You can't tell that, I mean, you can, but you can't tell quickly. Whereas the one on 89 looks ridiculous. I mean, everybody, you know, as you go down towards Sunapee ski
We're
area.
not gonna do one of those.
So,
You know, we just did one recently. I forget which town, but I'll ask Brendan, we can find out where they insisted upon it and now they're furious about it.
we had a police
It's
chief.
terrible.
We had a police chief respond to Freeman Hill for a complaint that somebody had dumped a bunch of brush out. And when they got there, it was the steel arms for the tower, it was a winter time and the guy couldn't get up there. And so he just left it beside the drive so the contractor could bring them up a piece at a time, but they looked so good that somebody called them in his brush. It was pine brush, evergreen.
You know, what happens though, inevitably, it has to be taller than the trees, so it looks unnatural to
Right.
have the one tree
Oh.
that's 30 feet taller
Yeah.
than the canopy. It never works. I've never seen it look good. It's just like, there was a trend in towns trying to make us paint it certain colors and.
Oh, we haven't got there yet. Don't, give that some time. We had the battle.
Make a motion.
We had the battle.
Go for it.
Like someone
I'll make a
actually
motion
said,
to adjourn.
paint it the color of the sky.
Yeah,
Live in New England, the sky is many different colors.
no, we've had lots of.
I would second that.
Can't make it change.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
All those in favor of the motion to adjourn?
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Was,
yes.
Second. All right.
All right, thanks for your time, everyone. We'll see you in